This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome back to the virtual BrainTrust. Again, I got Bill Patton back, ready to go. It's been cool because we have been talking kind of offline a little bit about all the things that are going on. A good friend of mine, Tim Baton, kind of published a thing yesterday, went live on how do we help the industry right now. Mike Woody over at Genesis has published a thing from the CEO of Genesis. They have about 4,000 people throughout, or lay off, not let go, but lay off. And pyro clinics that are having to let their associates off right now. There's a lot of understanding and a lot of energy going out right now of people feeling like they don't have anything, or maybe they're losing something. And you and I talked, and I think that there's an opportunity here in 2 weeks. Maybe I don't know how long it's going to be quarantine, but there is an opportunity in crisis. And I loved what you said in our last talk about what crisis meant in Chinese. And so let's go through that, Bill. Let's just I don't know where this is going to go, but I think it's going to be a really fun topic. I think it's going to help a lot of people, and then we can kind of go from there. But for those of you that are listening, this is the end of the world. If it is, it was awesome knowing you, but I don't think it is. If we can come together like this, even virtually, and have plans coming out of this, I think we're going to be a stronger society.
It was an honor to have been the last podcast you ever watched.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, let's start there. Okay. Everybody's gonna die.
Everybody's gonna die.
Death rate's still 100%. I mean, and we got to make the best of what we have here. And sports are not life and death. They're not.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think that's a really important perspective to have. Like right now, I mean, everybody now, appropriately or over the top, is really focused on mortality at this moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the numbers don't suggest that that's appropriate, but we still have this opportunity to confront that. So, a mirage or reality, it's still right here in front of us, and we're dealing with it. So yeah, I mean, it brings me back to the 7 habits of highly effective people, and one of them is begin with the end in mind, right? Think about how do you want to be remembered as you get started. And so now we have this opportunity where everybody's pretty much stopped. I mean, the distraction of pro sports and college sports are completely gone.
Yeah.
For a moment. So the subsection of society that, distracts themselves with that constantly, they're on full stop, right? And then, most, if not all, high school programs have pretty much stopped. I don't know of a place where high schools are still playing right now.
No, they're not. They're definitely not playing. And even within practice, they're doing social distancing practice, and that's right. A new concept.
Well, and here in the Bay Area, we're on almost lockdown. We're in shelter in place in 6 counties, so there's nothing. No events are happening. So now what do we do at this time? I mean, we really need to take stock of where we're at. And I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to stop and say, all right, what are the good things that are happening? And what needs to be improved? I'm a big fan of what's called plus delta, right? So you look for positives, and then you don't look for negatives, you just look at things that need to be improved. Yeah. And and we can stop and we can go, all right, what's the biggest problem that we can practically solve next? Because some problems can't be practically solved immediately because they're too big right now. Mm-hmm. But we can go and we can try to find a manageable problem, and we can also start the process of eating the elephant. The big societal problems, right? And so everybody get out your spoon and start eating that elephant one spoon at a time. And if we all get busy on that, that elephant's going to be gone in a while.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
you know, and I mean, one of them is the issue of cheating in tennis and actually a lot of sports. I mean, there's, you know, cheating. Wow. I mean, think about it. Cheating in whatever form it takes, from performance enhancing drugs to calling a ball out when it's in, to, you know, doing, you know, filming other people's practices.
Yeah.
And other illicit forms of gaining an unlawful advantage. Okay, hey, let's stop that, because that violates the whole idea of playing a game, because a game is an institution where there are rules, and when you play inside the rules, then there's honor in victory.
I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because like, let's go back to World War II for a second, right? Or even World War I. Sport is a lot of the things that brought people back together. And I think, you know, one thing that we see right now is people don't know what to do when there is no sport. Like, but sports become such a business, right? It's no longer about, even the Olympics. Like, if you look at the Olympics over time, you know, it used to be the amateur athletes, the best amateur athlete. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we'll let professionals in, and then we'll let this in, and we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do this. And now all of a sudden it's a marketing machine, you know what I mean? And so when I look at this, there's an opportunity here for us to say, okay, yeah, you know, athletes should absolutely be paid for what they do. I honestly feel that. I think that, you know what, people don't realize how hard it is to be a professional athlete. So I do think that there should be a payment for that. Now, on the other hand, I also think that there should be an opportunity right now for us to have family access to sports. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I think that, you know, with what you and I have talked about specifically in the past, is it's hard for a family of four to go to a professional event right now, financially. And following this crisis, it's going to be interesting to see how finances work and how the world of sports is going to work, because a lot of people aren't going to have money. So, you know, or you know what I mean? And so
the average fan will be most affected.
Exactly.
The luxury box fan will not be affected at all.
Well, most of the time, the luxury box fan is never going to be affected. And, you know, I think of how can we as a society right now, when we actually get back to live sports, or we get back to this, take the cheating aside, how do we just get participation from society to come back together? Like after 9/11, when we had a terrorism attack, you know what I mean? We saw the country come together. Even right now, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's some memes that are going around that I thought were pretty interesting around sports. It's like, hey, there was a meme that said, there's no sports on. All of a sudden, I noticed that my wife was on the couch, and wow, she's a nice person. And I was like, wait a second, that's kind of crazy that it's taken this type of a life inside of us, instead of really having family time. And, you know, I've talked to some of my buddies, and they're like, dude, it is interesting to have my entire family in the house for this, even like 3 or 4 days. They're like, we haven't spent this much time together. So how do we take sport in this time and put it back into a family-based like lifestyle?
Okay, and so that brings it back to distraction, right? We've distracted ourselves away from the things that really matter. You know, my wife and I are actually already looking forward to the next pandemic. So yeah, it's been, I've seen that one. It's like, hey, there's this guy on my couch, and it turns out I'm married to him, and he seems like a decent guy. Yeah. So but yeah, it is an interesting time. And so and if we take it away from the family and we just bring it back to sports, and we go, all right, let's do that. Let's make sports family again.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know, most kids playing Little League, the one thing they remember is the snack after the game. And it wasn't necessarily the snack, it was the fact that while they're snacking, they're also trying to trip their friend, you know, and slug him in the arm, and wrestling, and I mean, all the post-game hijinks that happen among a group of kids that like each other.
Yeah.
and work together. So, it wasn't necessarily the snack, it was the time together having the snack. So yeah, so I've been on a kick of building community for quite a while, and this is part of what my success is in both coaching teams and building clubs where I've been. Is one thing that was said about me, and I didn't realize it so much until someone said this to me, is they said, Bill Patton, bringing people together. And it kind of struck me. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. I guess that's what I do. And part of that is born out of crisis, because I grew up in a dysfunctional family. Now, a lot of people think they've grown up in a dysfunctional family, and then I would love to compare stories. And then I think what you'll find is maybe mine is more dysfunctional. So part of what I do is out of my own, kind of brokenness about the way I grew up, is I'm trying to create the family that I wish I had.
Yeah.
And so I do that pretty much wherever I go. And this is why I give people a lot of crap, and I try to get them to come off their high horses. And so I don't know if you've seen that happening, but I really don't care who anybody is, because I just want us to all get along on the same level playing field.
I think that's an interesting topic, even in that statement, because, obviously I grew up in a military family, dysfunctional in the sense we moved, I went to 13 schools. And so what I've learned, especially going through chiropractic college and going through different types of communication courses, is that I can't ever what somebody else has been through. Everybody has a story, right? And even like someone who's grown up with a family that stayed together, super wealthy and everything else, like they could have one thing that happened to them that, even though it's one small thing, that's a massive thing to them, right? And I've got to be able to respect that and understand that, okay, that's where their blockage is, or maybe that's where their limitation is, or maybe that's where their self is. And sometimes we have these environmental factors that happen as we grow up that hinder our ultimate success, right? And that could be financial, spiritual, mental, I don't care what kind of success it is, but that hinders their definition of success or what someone's told them how to be. And so when we build these communities, or tribes that I like to call them as well, Simon Sinek always talks about tribes and like knowing your why. And like, so here's my big thing is, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's where my beliefs are. Here's where my expectations are. What are yours? And can we meet? Can we meet partially? Can I support you in your expectations? You support me in mine. The biggest problem is within communities that we tend to close off people and we just tell people what we think. We don't even get to hear their side of the story. We're like, nope, this is what I think, this is what I'm doing, let's go ahead and do it. And I'm really hoping that in the end, that people are going to say, you know what, I'm hoping you need to listen. I'm open to listening right now, because I don't have my normal agenda. I don't have my normal situation. There's some self-reflecting that's going on. You see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook, you see it on TikTok. People are going flipping crazy right now.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of interesting. I made a meme yesterday that shows this guy, and he's kind of like, he doesn't look really bright, and he's saying, okay, so it's your immune system that will help you fight this off, but you went to the store for toilet paper, bottled water, and potato chips.
Yeah,
I like chips. So so it's, people have lost their rationality for a bit, and that's okay, they'll come back to it. But when you were talking, one thing that kind of came to mind for me was last summer when we were in Irvine, and you came to me and you said, hey, can I count on you to help me present? And I immediately said, if you think you're going to have me do something physical, right, think again, because I've got these chronic issues, right? And I loved it that you immediately shut that down. Yeah. And that's a perfect example of that interchange between, it's an example of you acting out of what you just said.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that because I needed space on that for sure. So
I
have a lot of respect for that. So anyway, now, but let's go back. I think let's go back to 30,000 feet because I think everybody needs to stop. I mean, the number one opportunity that we have is to stop and assess. Where are we? Where are we? Okay. So, one of the best quotes, Arthur Ashe, I do believe, stole the quote from Teddy Roosevelt, who probably stole it from somebody else. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but first, starting where you are, you have to know where you are. Where are you? What's your situation? Right. Right. What's in front of you? What's inside of you? Right. What are your issues? What are your, where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? I mean, assess where you are and then look at your situation and then where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? I mean, in the last talk, I talked about, the desire to become a thought leader, right? And so there's becoming that happens. I mean, I really had to work hard to become that person that I wanted to be, right? And there was stuff in the way, and it seems like, so we have to look at ourselves for a moment. We have to look in the mirror and say, who am I? Where am I? And where do I want to go? What do I have at my disposal to use to do what I can, right? And so, like, right now we're doing it. I mean, as soon as I saw impetus from other people to start doing this stuff, like you referenced Tim Bainton, right? I'm like, I'm all over that, man. We got to make this stuff go. So everybody get on the engine, and we're on our bicycle built for two. Everybody start pedaling. Let's put a couple of more things of pedals on there and see if we can't get everybody pedaling in the right direction.
Well, I think, can I attach on something you just said? I think one of the biggest things, and this is what I think has helped so many people in 12-step programs get better, right? They ultimately do an inventory, and they go back through and they see all of the people, places, or things that they have harmed, and they try to think. And I think right now, like, I'll just be completely vulnerable. Like, I've had a really tough time sitting still for 3 to 5 days. Like, this is not normal for me, right? And what this has caused me to do is to sit still and say, okay, just be for a minute. Like, this is telling you to slow the F down. Like, you need to slow down. And it's okay. Like, normally it's not okay. Like, my whole entire life, it's been, all right, you know what? We're moving to a new place. Be involved in a sport. Be involved in a club. Make sure you're on the honor roll. Make sure you win this. Make sure you win that. Make sure you get a reward. And there's a lot of people that are living like that. And in that process, taking the time to self-reflect and say, okay, who am I? Like, what have I wanted? And what do I really love? What am I really passionate about? And how can I make that happen? And so I've been taking inventory over these past few days and, like, really trying to say, okay, who can I reach out to? Who haven't I spoken to in a while? Like, who can I reconnect, rekindle with, because I know they're not busy? And wait a second, like, there's this physical piece that I may have been ignoring. Well, I have no excuses not to work out now. Like, it's like, okay, so we can do these things while we're taking this inventory to say, okay, who am I? Like, it's okay to say, I'm going to go watch a documentary right now. Like, we don't have to just jump on shows. Like, there's plenty of things out there that you can really take in at the moment. You can go on virtual vacations at the moment. You can go put on there's museums that are being offered all around the world. There's, musical plays Broadway plays that are for free right now. Like, if you want to really open up your creative side during this time, there's opportunity that has never been there before.
Yeah. And I mean, I think to me the most valuable, doing the work, right? Doing the internal work is really important. And, you know, I was thinking of some lines from an Elton John song written by Bernie Taupin. No, I'm serious. I mean, this
No,
no,
it's funny.
when
He was talking
Bernie
about
Bernie Taupin and Elton John was one of the greatest collaborations in music ever, right? And so there's a song called Goodbye Norma Jean, which I highly recommend that you listen to after this. This is your homework assignment if you're watching this. And it says, and they put you, and it's about Marilyn Monroe,
Mhm.
you know, and it says, and they put you on a treadmill and they made you change your name. And so what happened there? I mean, they put her on this path to stardom that was an endless stream of activity, and they took away her identity.
Mhm.
She had to become someone else. She had to become Marilyn Monroe, and it wasn't for her own good. It was the price to be paid for stardom. So
Yeah.
we do that. We do that to ourselves. We're sometimes willing to sacrifice who we are and our integrity and what we truly believe for the sake of a trophy or a title or, you know, adulation.
Yeah. What do you
So
think? Let me ask you this.
yeah.
What do you think some of the difficulties that people might be going through from the psychology side right now, and some action steps that they can take to create some balance?
Okay, well, and this gets back to you know, right now they say 1 in 4 people is mentally ill, right? And what does that mean? I mean, okay, the bulk of them are not seriously mentally ill. I mean, they just suffer from anxiety. I mean, so there's a great book, The Road Less Traveled. This would be a good time to read The Road Less Traveled, which is one of the most influential books in my life. And it has given me a blueprint for understanding people, maybe more than any other book. And Scott Peck, says that there are 2 roots to mental illness. One is neuroses. So that's where you take on responsibility for things that are not your problem. Okay, and so people who've been blamed by others a lot or pressurized by others tend to take that on. And we all have a little bit of a neurotic side to us. You know, we worry about stuff we shouldn't worry about. We take on responsibility for things that are not our problem. And then the other one is character disorder, which is practically the opposite, where people blame outside circumstances or other people or the world for their problems. So they don't take responsibility enough for what they do in the world. And so and the thing that Scott says is that you can work with the neurotic person, but you can't really work with the character disordered person, because once you do, they'll blame you.
Yeah.
So the trick is you go to the character disordered person, you first get them to identify things they take too much responsibility for. Then you say, then you can get into what do they not take enough responsibility for. So, you know, and so now let's bring that to sports, right? Coaches haven't taken enough responsibility for their time on the player's timeline and in guiding them and pointing them in the direction of long-term health, happiness, and success.
Yeah.
Coaches have dropped the ball on that. And then players end up making shortcuts, you know, not preparing properly, and or get into performance enhancing drugs, or, you know, the wrong crowd, lots of other things. You know, and coaches can at least point people in the right direction. But instead, many coaches just leave kids alone because they know that they're good in the red zone.
Yeah.
Or they've got a big serve and a big forehand. I have a story. This is incredibly tragic, and you know, I'll try to contain my emotions on this one. But there was a young man played in a tournament that I was running, and his behavior was so bad that almost all the other juniors found it incredibly entertaining. So when this player played in tournaments, the other players would sort of gather around between matches and watch this kid play, because they love to watch him terrorize other kids. So, you know, he never gave the ball back to them. He always hit the ball back to the corner, right? He'd hang his towel behind the back of the court. He would mutter to himself, "I can't believe I'm losing to this horrible player." He would say, you know, it was just a steady stream of gamesmanship from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
So he lost his match. So I tremendously admire the player that beat him, because he had to put up with an awful lot of stuff. The mental strength to be able to go through all of that, right?
Yeah.
And beat him. I was amazed. That was really great. So anyway, that kid, the kid that lost, threw his racket harder than any racket I've ever seen thrown in my whole life. And it was actually dangerous to people around him. Mm-hmm. So even though he had lost the match, I defaulted him from the tournament.
Yeah.
So the score was recorded, default, you know, direct referee's discretion, right? I mean, basically it was, you know, unsportsmanlike conduct. Yeah. So we didn't go through the code. It was just a straight default, which meant then he was now not eligible to play doubles. Mary, so his doubles partner then, hi Mary, his doubles
Mary,
partner.
Can we take your camera off? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
While you're doing that, I'll keep talking.
No, I'm listening.
I'll pick it up after the.
I made you the presenter, Bill. Can you just click off the camera for her? Sorry.
I don't know how to do it.
Okay. Just keep going. I'm listening.
Okay. So, all right. So then that created some controversy, and his doubles partner came to me, and he's the 16-year-old snot-nosed kid comes to me and says, "You realize that you just defaulted your #1 doubles team, right?" You know, yeah. and I'm just looking at this kid like, wow, tell somebody who cares, because I really don't give a flying leap about that, right? I don't want this kid in my tournaments. So then I was under investigation by the local section for my over-the-top reaction to the situation.
Yeah, Mary, and I'm sorry, like, Mary, can you do me a favor? Can you just hit the video thing next to your name or your webcam? Is
that right?
Yeah, can you just click it off for me and click mute on your thing so it's coming through? All right. Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I got
so I tried to go back to these officials and say, hey, look, you've got this all wrong. You've got this all wrong. I don't know why you want to investigate me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this player's got a serious character issue that needs to be addressed, and he was poisoning the atmosphere of my tournament, and I want to run a really nice tournament where everybody feels safe and happy and we're all having fun. So then a couple of years later, that same young man died under tragic circumstances. And it always raises a red flag to me when the news of someone's passing does not include any details about how it happened. And so now, you know, in my worst imaginings, you know, he met a.
I got you, Bill. Just keep going.
Okay, you still got me on camera?
I will. Yep, in a second. Just keep going. I'm talking. Just keep. It's recorded.
Okay, so in my mind's eye, in my worst imaginings, you know, he met a tragic end, and I'm wondering, it's a question that always plagued me, if his character issues had been addressed early on and he hadn't been promoted so much simply because he was good, and
Yep.
people had actually sort of required him to deal with these things, would he still be alive? So I mean, these are the kind of things that plague me, and then then there's the Aaron Hernandez case, football player, right? I mean, apparently Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer really tried to get through to him, and there were others that did, but I think we know for sure that there were coaches that just simply overlooked his behaviors because he was good at football. So this is really important stuff to be able to say, all right, are we in the character building business? And even I remember in the 90s stopping and being a part of committees and whatnot, and saying, hey, we have an impending character crisis in athletics and with our tennis kids. So, and I'll tell you what, you teach character, you help develop character. Good characters are going to win more tennis matches.
Yeah. Bill, just click your camera on your thing. I'm sorry about this. This is a learning curve. There you go.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're good. All right.
There I am. And then let me see. And then you have it on.
Yeah, I got it. There we go.
All right. So, oh yeah, share my webcam. You see me now, so again. All right, no, it's good. So I think what you'll find is people are very forgiving of these things, and actually they're probably somewhat amused. So
yeah.
couple of little glitches make it more fun for everybody. So
right.
I mean, so at the end of the day, I mean, how do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as somebody who, when I was on the kids' timeline, I interacted with the parents. We formed a team that was all about the kid. We helped the kid get from here to there. The kid leaves, we say goodbye, good luck at your next stop. Maybe I'll see you again sometime. If I don't, farewell.
Yeah.
And it's really gratifying to have people come back. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while I get a little message from somebody who's a former player. Hey, coach, here's what I'm up to. And thanks for the lesson on blank.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm at Columbia School of Medicine. I'm going to be a doctor for the Navy.
Yeah.
Right. What? And they gave me an apartment in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I'm like, can I come live there? So,
yeah, exactly.
I've had kids come back from the military and say, hey, thanks for teaching me about confidence, because that really helped me. It helped me get through my training. One of my former players is now like a child law advocate in South Central Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Charlene, you're my hero. It's just amazing. I just love that you're doing that.
I think, it's one of those things where it's so amazing being a coach or being a doctor or being somebody who's able to help influence youth, right? And, right now, we have so many people that have this ability to help people at this moment. So I think the biggest thing that I would say in all of this is, there are platforms for you to share your story right now. And this one's obviously like no cost to anybody, like that's watching. Like if you want to share a story or you want to share education or you want to help somebody grow, like I'm giving this because I think it's important for people to have that right now. Like there's no cost. Hey, if you want to take the time, the only thing that's the cost factor is your time, your energy. And being able to do that is going to leave a lasting impression on at least somebody out there. One person is going to take the information that we record over the next weeks and then hopefully beyond that. But little things, it's like the little mustard in the Bible, right? Like it falls on like a one gets picked up by the bird, one gets into like flat soil, one gets into like actual soil. And I'm just hoping that like through some of these conversations that these seeds get planted, and that we get to see a future that we brighter, before we came into this.
And that's awesome, because I love, and then there's the mustard seed, which is this little tiny thing, right? But it grows to be, by proportion, the largest change, between the size of the seed and what the outcome is, right? And that's about faith, right? So I mean, the mustard seed analogy is, if you had faith like a mustard seed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a lot, right? So yeah, believing in that stuff, and in sports, there's a lot of cynicism. I run into a lot of cynicism. Oh yeah, hey, good luck to you. Wow, you really have your priorities off. Talking about fun, because it's all about hard work, right? And I'm like, no, you don't get it, because now, see, I mean, here's the other thing. Coaches have lost empathy. They've forgotten what it's like to be a kid.
Yeah.
And they have this notion that they're going to be the slave driver that made it all happen. And they have no concept that the reason kids are quitting sports is because it's not fun anymore.
100%.
And so, I mean, you can actually get more work done better, and probably with less risk of injury, if you make it enjoyable.
Yeah. And I think
because part of it's the mental. I mean, the stress and the anxiety is a hotbed for injury.
Well, nowadays, I mean, so many kids have so much going on in their head compared to when you and I played sport. You have to gamify things now. You have to play within the system that their brain's at. Because if you don't, it's not stimulating. Two, they're not going to learn. There's a lot of different learning styles. A lot of them don't even have a well-developed cerebellum. So their motor skills, communication skills, everything else, because they haven't developed correctly. And now, you're fighting this. And so you may be trying to train a kid or teach a kid that doesn't understand your way of teaching and learning. And so you've got to make it come backwards. Like a lot of these kids, they can't even hop, skip, jump, crawl. You can't do that. I mean, at the age 13, 14, 15, 16, that's a massive issue. And if you go and correlate that, if you go look at their grades, it's a crossover. It's real. Like kids that can't, run, jump, skip, hop, there's definitely a correlation to how they learn, how they study, how they take in information, how they hold information, how they actually use information. And I think a lot of parents right now are starting to see that in this quarantine. I'm telling you, I'm seeing it on Instagram. I'm seeing it from people texting me. Like, they're like, holy crap, the parent or the teacher wasn't lying. Like, my kid isn't a monster, but holy cow, like, I didn't realize it was this fast. Like,
right.
I go to work and I send my kid to school, and then all of a sudden they come home and they don't see the difficulties of this new generation that's stuck on technology, that's stuck on instant gratification. They're writing a dopamine response through their text messages.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's a scary thing.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting, because I'm reflecting back on, I took a little psychological inventory, and I was determined to have suffered from low academic comfort.
Low academic comfort.
Low academic comfort. I mean, I've just always hated school.
Yeah.
And I didn't really do particularly well in high school for lots of different reasons. But it wasn't until that I actually started training as an athlete to perform at a pretty high level that I started doing better in school.
Yeah.
And I did decently, in college, and I was smart enough to not take more than, say, 12 units at a time, because I knew that was beyond my capacity to be able to cope. So I took an awfully long time to get through college, and then I think people would be surprised to find that. I mean, I've written books now, right? And then My friends think it's one of the most ironic and funny things that I was ever a school teacher.
Yeah, so I didn't know that about
So I
you.
was a school teacher for 8 years, and when I told people I'm a school teacher, they're like, "You," shock and disbelief. You, and one thing that made me very effective as a school teacher was my own academic discomfort.
Yeah.
So that was a crisis that led to an opportunity because I had empathy for the kids. I hated it just as much as they did. So I tried to make it a little easier on them, in terms of the day-to-day experience.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing too, is, again, that's putting our expectations on other people. And, we cram these classrooms with all these different kids without really knowing their learning styles. We live on this world of standardized testing, which I'm totally against.
Right.
I think it's a complete BS way to do it, personally. And I think there's so many kids, like, we've got to stop putting pressure on kids to go to college. Like, I don't think college is for everybody. I don't. And I think there's a lot of opportunity right now for trade school. Like, I think there's going to be a great opportunity on like, what can we do to train people to have better jobs? Like, looking at it, you can become an electrician making over $100 grand within a few years out of high school.
Right.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, that's not for everybody either. But I do think that if we went to trade schools, we could take down student loan debt. Student loan debt is one of the biggest things enslaving the generation that I'm a part of. They can't buy homes. They can't, do all these other things because they have this massive amount of debt because they were told, you've got to have this education to do what you're going to do.
Right. Well, okay. So now, I mean, where's the connection between that and the sports world now? I mean,
oh, that's massive. So think about this, right? So if you've got, like, don't get me wrong, there's just college sports. And so within that, yeah, you've got to go to a college to play college sports. But even beyond that, there's plenty of amateur type competitions now in every single sport that you can go play. There are men's leagues, women's leagues. There's different types of competition, triathlons. You need no college experience at all. And some of the kids that are playing college sports, unfortunately, they're not doing well academically. And it's sad to see how many kids fall out of the college education system that are student athletes because they were never a student first. And that's hard.
Or, they choose these majors that are taking them nowhere, right? So I when I'm watching college football, I always look at what are they majoring in, and I'm like, recreation, yeah, it's going to take you far. So you'll be working at the park, that's good. But no, I mean, and it's a great point though, because yes, you're competitive, because we think too much about the 1%, or even the fraction of 1%. We think too much about being a pro or being an Olympic athlete. And athletics is a healthy thing at a very wide range of participation levels. I mean, you got the weekend warriors at the park playing every Saturday and Sunday morning, right? And they're not even part of a league or whatever, So just giving people outlets and letting people find their own path to what their ultimate destiny is. So we have a subsection of coaches who, if the player isn't serious enough about being ambitious to play at a high level, then the coach is no longer interested in them. Some of my favorite players are like high functioning autistic kids, and it's just a miracle that they're playing a match. I mean, I have this kid that I've been working with for about 18 months. And when I first met him, he was talking like a robot, and I actually got him conversing. I would ask him a yes or no question, and he would say, probably. I'm like, no, yes or no. Can you say yes for me? Because probably doesn't cut it. And so I was working with him on his ability to engage, because it was going to have an impact on how he was going to learn how to play tennis. So I also kind of had to go through, attack the social part of it. And now 18 months later, I mean, when it was pretty obvious when I first met him that he was high functioning autistic, now I would say you'd be hard to guess that.
Yeah, I think what's great about tennis is it trains both sides of the body. It has you do forward, backward, agility, jump, run. And so it really does help the cerebellum balance out. And so kids that are ADHD, autistic, have any type of learning disorder, this is a sport that really helps those kids out. They're working both sides. They're getting that information of receiving, getting back. And so I think that's a neat thing for kids with autism or, any type of learning disorder is to get involved in tennis because it does allow them. And the cool thing is they're not overwhelmed by a team aspect right off the bat. It's still individual. People aren't in their space. They're able to learn. They're able to take self-criticism. They're able to grow without being picked on or have somebody, bullying them. And so that's where I think tennis is a really cool sport for kids that do have maybe some natural social distancing, not right now social distancing, but natural. And they're like, you know what? Then you get them into a doubles where now they have a partner. They feel comfortable and confident. And then from there, now they start to be around more people and they can go out from there as well. So that's what I've seen in tennis so far, especially with AC and autism. And there's a bunch of different other organizations that are working with those kids.
Yeah.
I've seen some massive results happen, with learning disorders and the game of, racket sports, which I think is a really, really, really right now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool stuff. I mean, so yeah, I mean, here's an interesting thing. I have a little diatribe on learning styles because Dr. Howard Gardner, Harvard University education professor, he came up with the multiple intelligences theory.
Okay.
That we have 7 to 10 different intelligences, and he's not even too finite about those. Not everybody has 10. Most people seem to have 7 or more.
Mm.
There could be styles, that he hasn't discovered yet. But it's the spatial, the interpersonal, intrapersonal, visual, kinesthetic, environmental, musical, rhythmical. I'm leaving some out, I'm sure. So anyway, and they flow together. The lines between them are not finite.
Yeah.
So because if I all of a sudden start talking in a certain way that's a little more rhythmical, well, that's a verbal and it's musical rhythmical. So there's a combination of the two things, right? So anyway, so he was furious that people took the multiple intelligences and sort of simplified it and turned it into these learning styles, because then what happens is people sort of get categorized into finite boxes of learning style identity. Mm-hmm. So and because it's fluid, and recent research shows that whatever part of your brain you're really engaging at that time, blood flow increases to that part of your brain. Yeah. So people can shift to different modalities, and they can also exercise weak parts of their brain, and you alluded to that earlier, and that's also helped by the polylateral motion of racket sports and using both sides of your body and a lot of other things. So it's really fascinating how complicated and fluid the whole thing is.
It is. And I think that, right now, if people can take these lessons of sport and of learning and apply it to their life at the moment, because this is a trials and tribulation moment for a lot of people. For myself, I mean, I'm struggling sitting still for hours at a time.
But you look well.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. It's the perception versus reality, though. And, it's where having the opportunity to connect with friends like you and over the internet and being able to say, we have something to share. I keep coming back to that, that's what's allowing me to go introspective. What did I learn? What am I learning for myself right now? I'm learning a ton, just saying okay, Sean, maybe it's okay to slow down. It's okay. You don't have to have this part of your brain that is like a dopamine response for work or for conquering something or for having to be the best at something. right now, maybe it's okay to just be calm and be like, I hate the word, but someone's like, Sean, try being mediocre. And I'm like, what do you mean by being mediocre? I'm like, I don't know how to be mediocre. I'm like,
I don't
don't
like
know.
the sound of that.
But I got what they were trying to say though is like, look, you don't have to accomplish anything right now. Right now, you just have to like sit still because something magical might come out of that. And
Yeah.
it really is happening.
You know, and that really resonates with me. So, so in the other talk, I referenced, you know, the car accident that kind of changed the course of my life and the concussion syndrome that I had that was pretty bad. And as a result of that, one of the things that was one of my mantras was something that I got from Steve Chandler, who's one of the top life coaches in the world, and he's also a recovering alcoholic. So that kind of ties in with the whole recovery thing, 12 steps,
Yeah.
right? And so one of his early books, he said he had this chapter on slowing down. And he said, how much better in life would we do if we told ourselves 20 times a day to slow down?
Mm-hmm.
And then to piggyback on that, you know, I was signing up for every self-help email newsletter and some really spooky ones that were kind of weird. And all of a sudden I get this one that blew my mind, and it was about the Sylvan mind control method, which sounds kind of weird, but what they did is they would take biofeedback devices with people where they're measuring their EEG while they're busy doing work. And what they found is people whose brains are operating at 19 cycles and lower are approaching genius level work, and people whose brains are 21 cycles and above are anxious, worried, rushing, making mistakes that they will have to use 3 times as much time to correct and then redo, right? Because when you make a mistake, you did it, then you have to undo it, then you have to do it again. And because you had to undo it, maybe you ruined it. I mean, if you're working with wood, you don't make mistakes. So slowing down, measure twice, cut once.
It's like sharpening, it's like Abraham Lincoln, right? Sharpen the axe, like for 20, however many hours to cut the tree down.
Yeah, and after 3 full years of doing that internal work, then I was ready to write a book.
Good for you.
So, I mean, but it took that process. It took that time of doing that. And then I could actually sit down for 30 minutes and write.
That's awesome. Well, Bill, I appreciate you, brother. I think the biggest things hopefully people got out of today is number one, taking inventory, actually taking inventory of what's going on in your life, where you're at. Number two, look around and see who matters and who's part of your support system and maybe who you need to reach out to.
Well, and you know what? Be ready to be surprised. Maybe somebody you didn't think mattered really does. So when somebody reaches out to you, assume that that's what's going on there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, stay tuned, everybody. Bill and I will be back later on this week, if not early next week.
Who knew?
All right, brother. Have an amazing day. Stay safe up in the Bay.
All right. Take care, Sean. Thanks for doing this.
All right, brother.
All right, bye-bye.
And that's... Why is this not?
It's okay. You can edit it. What are you using to edit this with?
Nothing right now. I haven't.
Oh, okay. I got a tip for you.
Hold on one second.
What kind of computer are you using?
Oh, change back. Press recording stop on your side. I made you the presenter.
Good. Wait a minute. Disconnect or meeting reminders. Good. I mean, you're the organizer.
Yeah, I know, but it's not letting me.
I bet if we just close it out, it's gonna stop. Okay.
But,
stop my webcam.